I was born in Liverpool, New South Wales. My parents came out from Turkey. My dad was a very abusive man, was abusing my mum in all sorts of ways, very controlling, abusing alcohol, drugs. He didn't do anything to us directly, but I think being a witness, it did affect us in a lot of ways. My mum got so unwell. She was battling a brain tumour. She was just mentally unstable. My dad just left. He started a new family, got a new wife, or a new partner anyway. And mum tried to fight for us at court, but she had no legs to stand on, really. She had no support. She was in a foreign country. She had no friends. She was very isolated. So in the end, she kind of lost the battle, and we were placed in foster care. My little brother and I stayed together throughout the whole journey. We just moved around quite constantly. We just knew that no one really wanted us, so we just stuck it out together. We looked out for each other. We had each other's back. He was all that I had, and I was all that he had. I loved him as almost like my own, which is a sad thing, that I'd look at him more like my son rather than my little brother, which then obviously led to a codependency, unhealthy relationship between us two. We just continued to move foster homes after foster homes. We lived in about 28 foster families. Yeah. The reason for moving so many times is because I'd misbehave. I would yell, kick walls. I would actually have tantrums quite frequently. I would just be very destructive in the house. I was terribly punished for just trying to express how I felt. I was like, I'm gonna have control over this. Like I'm gonna cause a problem so that it's in my hands. I'm controlling the outcome of this. Tantrums happen for a reason, you know. Mine were a bit more escalated only because there was this inner being just wanting to have a say, like wanting to express how she was feeling. And most often than not, it was just, I'm scared. Carers, as soon as there's any kind of behaviour, they're always threatened, I'm calling the caseworker. And that's not what a young person in this situation needs to hear. It was just really hard to settle. It was hard to trust. It was hard to just feel safe. I was just always anxious. I was always looking at the door. I was always wondering whether the caseworker was going to come in and tell us it's time to move on again. I always was watching my back. I was always just wondering and not being very present. I was just waiting and waiting until it was just sprung on us that we were going to move, which is how it was. Every time we all moved, there was never closure. There was never a goodbye. It was literally caseworker rocks up, tells us it's time to go. And you just pack as quickly as you can, whatever you have. And obviously we couldn't pack very much because it was like, I'm coming back for you in the next hour or so. Having moved so many times, I had to move schools. And so, yeah, I never really made friends, or if I did, I knew it wasn't going to last very long. I was just constantly worried, and I was constantly fearful and anxious and misunderstood a lot of the time. I developed this frown on my face because I was such a sad and I would say very angry young person. My foster mum used to just yell at me and say, wipe that frown off your face, and like would just yell at me all the time. They used to say that I was ungrateful, that I didn't appreciate anything that anyone did for me. There was times where she would slap me in the face, she would slap my leg. Like she was like physically abusing me without actually asking me why I developed that frown. And so because it'd been such a thing that I did, it was actually really hard to remove the frown. Why would I? I was still experiencing the same things. It's really hard to smile when it's not something that you feel is going to be a long-lasting experience. My experiences in the foster care system was very messed up. I experienced emotional abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment. I remember in most foster homes had locks on cupboards, doors, they withheld food. I remember many of the foster homes would be forced us to eat certain foods and weren't allowed to leave the table unless you ate it all. All the foster homes were unsafe in some way or another, whether it was emotional, physical, sexual. Often, the male father figure was the inappropriate one. And also, my brother experienced a lot of physical abuse. And so that was a nightmare for me because, I wanted to protect my little brother. And when you're forced to be pushed out of a room and you hear your brother screaming and in distress and legitimately he's being abused, I just remember being in fetal position and just rocking myself to try and calm myself because there was nothing I could do. And I felt like a failure because I couldn't protect him, I couldn't get to him, I couldn't push that man off him. I guess the foster parents, they just didn't care. They really did not care. It was about the money and it was about what they could gain out of it. And I just remember how fake these foster parents were when the caseworker would come for a house visit. They would just totally different people. And then it's like the abuse started happening again as soon as she walked out the door. It was always hard too when there were biological children. And so there was a bit of an imbalance, or a huge imbalance in the way we were treated compared to the other kids in the household. How they'd be punished would be totally different to what we were punished with. There's the wrong beliefs that I began to carry was that whatever anyone says I am, I am. Whatever I have to do, I do. I'm a reject, I'm worthless, I don't matter, I don't belong anywhere, I'm unlovable. Ultimately that I was worthless. So when my foster carers told us that we were going to get adopted, they were probably our longest placement. I think initially we were like, oh, this is so exciting, like we're going to belong somewhere. That means we're not going to move on again. Maybe this means that I can make good friends. And so I just really started building a life with this family. I started calling my foster mum. They often expressed how much they loved us, and I actually felt valuable. That was the level of relationship that I had with this family. And then it just caved, it just crumbled, like it was just stripped out from underneath. To this day, I'm not sure why. It came up to like a week out from this adoption that the caseworker just came for a visit, a surprise visit, and just said, hey, it's not happening anymore and you're moving. And it wasn't just like around the corner, it was moving 2.5 hours away to a new area. I just really felt so let down. I just really struggled. Yeah. It was very hard. It made me really confused about what love is. Someone says, I love you, but then surely that's not what you do if you love someone. And, being a young person at the time, you just learn to not ask questions. You just kind of get used to just being told what to do and you have actually no choice in the matter. And that was hard. And that's why I learned to hold how I was feeling on the inside, and I didn't care how much it felt like I was suffocating or feeling that choking feeling, because all I wanted to do was scream and just say, why is this happening? And why can't we find, why can't you find a family for us? And why can't I just go back to my mum? It was better off being there than doing this all the time. And I had all these emotions that I just learned to keep inside, because there was no point in expressing them because I still had to move. Straight after that potential adoption, so I was about 11, 12 years old, I remember going to a school on the coast. I had this toughness about me, but also scared. I was petrified because I was starting a new school and I was actually in high school now. Bullying pretty much happened straight away. I was a new girl. Girls didn't like me. Boys wanted one thing, and we were like, when you're vulnerable, they know, like people know when you're vulnerable. I remember this particular guy, he was in year 12, I was only just in year 8. So I was very young, and I learnt later on that he was the most popular guy at school. Like he would just be following me all the time. He would contact me via phone, like he would do all these things. And it was my first exposure to, oh, someone cares about me. He's saying things to me that I've not heard before. And so I got quite involved with this guy. At night, he was like, oh, like, let's hang out. I only live a street away. That sounded exciting to me. So I went over to his house. I was like, it went from just chatting and hanging out with this cool, popular guy to, oh my gosh, he's touching me in places that I've never, like, this is scaring me. He was not listening to anything I was saying. When I said, no, stop, he just kept on going and going. And before you know it, he ended up raping me. I felt so scared and I felt so frozen because I had no idea what was happening. And because I'd never had any education around what sex was, I had no idea. And so naturally, I just bled. And he just laughed at me. He goes, you're a virgin, and just laughed at me. And I go, what is that? I remember, like, I look at that memory and I just remember this innocence. Like, what's that? Like, why am I bleeding? Like, I didn't understand. And so anyway, I walk home and I'm just like bloodied and distraught. But then I had to stay silent because I felt like I had no one to talk to. And I was like, I don't know what just happened. And then I remember going to school the next day. Everyone knew. Everyone called me a slut. I started getting all these labels, and it was like my fault. And I was humiliated. Like, people were just saying, oh, you're a virgin, no, you're not. And like just laughing at me. And again, I'm still with this innocence going, what has happened to me? Like, what's happened? When people speak something over you constantly and you're around it constantly, it's just who you become, because it's easier to become that than having to deal with the pain of trying to prove yourself that you're not that. And so I just kind of went with it, and it became like a lineup for men. Promiscuity began, I didn't know what my rights were. I just thought, well, this is just what you do. He didn't listen to me when I said what I said, when I said no. And so that meant men have a right to do whatever they want, regardless of what I say. And so I experienced numerous traumatic experiences where I was assaulted. All I desired was to have friends. I wanted people to look out for me. I wanted to belong somewhere. And there was this one girl that I befriended, and I thought she was actually looking out for me. I get a call in the middle of the night, oh, come out, like we're going out. I remember talking to my foster mum saying I can't sleep. And so she gave me a really strong sleeping pill. It didn't affect me immediately, so I'd taken it. Then I got the message from my friend, come out, so I did. And then I remember falling over, was on the ground, and then I was surrounded by all these men. It was like 8 men. And they were just doing whatever they pleased with me. And I could not physically move my body. It was like I was so alert, but my body was unable to move. And so I was experiencing hell, it felt like. And I just remember like praying in my head, God help me, make them stop. And eventually they did. I remember hearing a voice say, oh, like, this is really bad. We could all go jail for this. And then I remember like pretty much being dumped out the front of my foster home. And when it was morning, I was able to take myself inside, and I just laid in the bath and cried and cried, and I was in horrendous pain. Again, didn't speak to anyone about it. My caseworker came to visit me and she said, hey, you need to just tell me what happened, because there was a previous young person in there who's disclosed something. And I actually had a really good rapport with this caseworker, and so I felt quite comfortable to talk to her about it. And I told her that, you know, I was gang raped and my whole experience. She actually told me that she'll do something about it. And so, I entrusted her with that. Felt like I was letting go of the pain, like that pain, by disclosing it to her and knowing someone I trust would handle it. And I'm just suffering. Like, I feel so much pain, and I got no one knows this, no one believes me, no one is helping me. And so I just struggled day in, day out. I just recall like, you know, walking up to the front door and just feeling so scared. Every time we moved to another foster home, it was like, oh, like, what are they going to be like? Are they going to like us? You know, it's getting used to the new home, the new rooms, the new environment. It's just really scary. And this particular couple were very welcoming. Something seemed different about this foster home. They embraced us immediately. And then later at night, I just went downstairs and my foster dad was there, and he's a trained counsellor and everything. So he just knew how to ask me the questions. And so I just started talking to him about stuff, about things that I was struggling with and my fears and all the rest of it. And this became a time where he really loved this time. I started to pick up on the fact that it was an unhealthy thing, because he was kind of expecting conversations at night, late at night, every night. And if I didn't, he would give me silent treatments. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, why is he giving me silent treatments for not talking to him? And so I'd write letters and apologizing for my error. And I remember like pretending to sleep at night. Normally later on in night, he would just come to the door and he'll just whisper things to me as if I was asleep, just like how much he loves me. And it was quite excessive. And I was like, this is so odd. Starting to feel really uncomfortable. And then I started to think, oh, maybe he loves me more than his wife, kind of vibe. I started to resent him, and I started to just do the bare minimum and then run upstairs, like after dinner, like try and get away from being in the same room as him. Started to wrestle with like depression and like anxiety, and the images in my mind just started to escalate. I felt like I was having flashbacks and I was having nightmares, and things just started to get really bad. My experiences growing up just started pouring in at different times, and I was feeling so overwhelmed by it, and I felt like so trapped in it, and I couldn't talk to anyone about it. It wasn't until I got a new caseworker, I built a little bit of a relationship with her. I said to her, like, I have a plan, you know, I want to move out, but I wanted to do the right thing by the courts, because if I just left, because I was still under 18, they would just have the police come and find me and take me back. And so I just thought, all right, I want to do this right. And so we had this family meeting with the foster carers and the caseworker to try and mediate, try and find a solution. My foster dad just denied everything, and he just kept saying, no, that's not true. And that stirred up something inside me. I was like, well, what's the point? Like, you're not listening to me. I'm done. Like, I just went full stop, I'm out of here. And then from there on, I just lived with a friend and her mum for a little while. Then my brother came back home from camp and found that I was gone. And so he reached out to me and in so much distress because he's like, why'd you leave me here? You know, that brought up so much emotion for me because I was like, well, I've spent my whole life being abandoned and neglected. And here I am, I just did that to my brother, who's the last person I'd ever want to do that to. Had me feeling terribly guilty and ashamed and so bad. Like, I felt like a bad person for leaving him behind. I couldn't do much. I couldn't help him. I had to just try and take care of myself. I was still going to school. I still finished, like, I was doing year 12. But I remember just being at the bus stop, and that is when I met a really nice guy, introduced myself, and he introduced himself. And I just felt like a sense of safety around this person. And I was like, oh, that's weird, because I've never had an exposure to safe people, especially men. I didn't like men. I hated men because of all my experiences. But I had this feeling in my heart that I'd never had before. And it was like just a calmness in my heart. Hayden was one of the leaders at youth group. I didn't have any contact with Hayden other than just seeing him every Friday. And so I looked forward to every Friday, and I just pop my head over the computer desk and just go, hey, and then he'll go, hey, and then I'd wait a whole week for that again. Every time I seen Hayden, I'd feel like so joyful, like I'd feel this happiness inside that I never had experienced ever in my entire life. Hayden became a really safe person for me, and I started to like him, and it was just odd because I just never experienced this before. In my mind, because I felt so young, and he seemed so mature, which he is, I was like, oh, like it just doesn't seem like it could ever happen. He's a youth leader. I'm a young person, but I'm not really a young person because I've gone into leadership as well, and I wasn't actually that much younger than him. Became a youth leader and ended up doing camps and just being around Hayden a lot more and getting to know him a bit more. And then when I moved out to another family, it happened to be his best friend at the time. So then I got to hang out outside of youth group with Hayden. Eventually we did disclose to each other, like we did like each other, but we were also being mindful that if we were going to move forward, that it was going to be a forever thing, not just a temporary thing. Yeah, when we ended up saying we liked each other, it was like, all right, let's pray about this. And so we did. We prayed about it. The timing was just right. And then we ended up saying, okay, we're boyfriend and girlfriend now. That was so very exciting. We were very happy. And, you know, it was so nice to actually find a friend in him, because that's what was different as well. It wasn't like he was invasive. He wasn't, you know, he was very respecting of my boundaries. He was respectful in the way he approached me. He was gentle. He was patient. He was kind. He showed what I'd never seen before. And so I was very intrigued. And the fact that I felt safe around him was like a huge difference to anything else that I experienced in my life. Started to get quite scared, and I was just really struggling to keep moving forward for a little bit there. So I started to question, am I like this will be a punishment to him if he gets involved with me. Some wise person along the line spoke to me about, if you're pursuing and wanting a long-term relationship or marriage, like it's really healthy to be honest about your past, to actually give them opportunity, because it's not fair. Because if something comes up throughout and they don't even know about it, that's kind of like ripping them off a bit. It doesn't give them like a choice in the matter. This thought kept going around in my mind because I was like, I need to tell him the truth. And I have to be honest with him. So I shared I didn't have my virginity anymore. And then it kind of like overflowed into other conversations about some of my trauma, and the way that he approached me was so gentle and loving and embracing. Like he just immediately grabbed my hand and just pulled me in close and said, I love you regardless. And that was like my first, wow, someone believes me. Like it comforted a part of me that had been so pushed down and so not believed, that for him to go, I hear you, but that doesn't define how I see you. Like, thank you for trusting me with that, but it's all good. Like, I love you for you. And so that I fully just responded to. So the proposal happened when we were on a leadership camp in the Blue Mountains. And it was really funny because that day I was very grumpy and irritable and just being really lazy and annoying. And for some reason, Hayden was acting a bit different. Like, he didn't eat anything, but he said he was feeling sick, and I was just like, something's off about you, but whatever. And then I still carried on with my attitude. And I remember going to like a few different mountaintops with the others. And then I remember getting to this particular one, and he goes, get out of the car, like we're going for a walk. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. I'll stay here. You go. And he goes, no, you have to come. And I was like, why? And then I was just like arguing with him. Anyway, I ended up following him, but I complained about it all the way. So then we would go, keep walking, and then he takes me off track, goes onto the edge of a mountain, and like we're sitting there, it starts raining, and we're just sitting there, and he's kind of like sitting like this, and he's like looking around, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is happening here? Anyways, and then he just kind of like poked me with his hand under and just kind of like, will you marry me? And I was like, what? Yeah, of course. Like one day, like I still wasn't clicking. I was just like, oh yeah, one day, that's like what we're going to do. And he goes, no, like, And then he ended up giving me a ring, and I was like, so in shock, and like, I was definitely caught off guard. But I was still very young because I was only engaged at 18, married at 19. Everything was just so rushed. At that point, we had like no money. When I went and looked for my dress, I was there by myself. I got a really cheap dress. I ended up getting a dress that like I was okay with. And I kept just telling myself it's not about any of that. It's about marrying Hayden, and just tried to keep reassuring myself. We just went to a local garden, and it seemed like a nice day. Like, I tried to be happy about it all, but it was a small dream of mine to have all the pretty flowers and to have the beautiful dress. Like, I envisioned I would get something so beautiful. I asked a friend to do the photography, but there were terrible photos, and she made excuses for why there were terrible photos. And I just felt so heartbroken, and it just was like the one thing that I really wanted did not happen. Yeah, it was just so disappointing, and I couldn't do anything about it because it was done and dusted. There's you don't get another day. It's done. And I'm in conflict with my mind going, no, you should be grateful. But then I'm like, but I'm really disappointed, and I'm really sad, and I'm really angry. I had all these emotions, and I also didn't want to offend Hayden. Kind of like kept it in until I couldn't keep it in anymore. As we progressed into our early years of marriage, and when I was escalating, when I was angry or like upset about something, I would usually say that. I would go like, our wedding day was horrible, and I would just speak quite negatively about it. And it was almost like I just wanted someone to blame, and poor Hayden got the brunt of it. As we went into marriage, my relationship changed with Hayden. What went from trusting, feeling safe, to now got all these images in my head that I didn't have before. Sexual intimacy and stuff like that was not something that was happening prior to us getting married. So obviously when we get married, like I literally felt every time we were intimate that I wasn't just in the room with him alone. It was all the faces, all the hands of the other men that abused me. And so I learnt to just kind of disconnect from myself. And also I had this belief that, oh, this is all that I'm good for. Like now I'm in a marriage and this is a requirement. Now I'm stuck. I had flashbacks, but these are like escalated now. I started to see their faces, all the abuse, all the sufferings I experienced was like being put on Hayden. And now I'm starting to see Hayden as an enemy when he's far from it. And so it just kept on going and going until like depression really kicked in. For 6 years, it was just so dark, like, and so alone and so isolating. Like it was just taking over. Like I couldn't seem to control what was going on. Like I had no control. And that was scary. I'd have this shooting pain through all my body, and so I would do anything to try and release that pain. So I'd be punching the walls, kicking walls. I'd be actually injuring myself to feel some sensation, like to try and alleviate the pain that I was feeling, even though I was inflicting pain. It kind of like helped a little bit. It was almost like I was possessed, like I was screaming and self-harming and just, you know, I was medicated, but the medication wasn't working properly. And so Hayden had to like hold me down a lot of the time, like, and to have Hayden kind of restrain me even scared me more. I was just at war with myself and just fighting verbally, physically. He was going through so much trauma because of what I was experiencing. Like he was trying to be supportive and also just trying to keep me afloat every day or just help me survive every day. Yet it was almost like he was triggering me all the time. All those like memories and all those experiences that I hadn't dealt with just kept taking over and then making me think that Hayden's just the same as everyone else. It was distorted now, like Hayden was distorted to me. And so, yeah, I just went crazy. My mind just went crazy. It's like I was just lost, like I wasn't there anymore. He would say, "Where are you? This is not who I'm like married, like where is Meltem?" And I go, "I don't know." Like it was literally, I was so disconnected. I couldn't come back even if I wanted to. I tried so hard to try and get rid of Hayden, but he just would not leave. Which just became more and more harmful to the both of us because I wasn't giving up in trying to destroy this. I started hitting him. I tried to get rid of him by saying, "You don't mean anything to me. You made a mistake. This is your fault that I'm experiencing this. You should have married someone else like pure and clean, not me," which was hurting him. Because he's like, "I didn't sign up, like I love you and you're just constantly at me, yelling at me, hitting me, you know, calling him names and just pushing him away as far as I can." But then I would like pull him back in, and so it was very conflicting for him. I was just a bully. It was like my whole internal world I was just projecting onto him. Because he was the only person that was standing in front of me who had actually stayed longer than anyone else had ever stayed in my life. And he wasn't going anywhere, which only made me so much more angry and so much more like desperate to prove to him that he made a huge mistake and that he should leave.
What stopped you from just leaving?
I felt like I had nowhere else to go. And a big part of me, really deep down, wanted this so bad. Like wanted to love, wanted to be loved, wanted to live this like ideal marriage where I'd be a wife. But why do I feel like a kid? Why am I feel like this little kid and you're just like up here, and it's like you got this, I just feel like you're all the way up there and I can't reach you. But I had in my mind, like, I desperately wanted to be the wife that I wanted to be a wife, and I wanted to be loving and caring. Like, there was a deep part of me that wanted that. And so I think that tiny little bit of desperation of wanting it just held me in there. It's like I just kept coming back to, like, where am I going to go? And this is not the right thing to do. But I also didn't have a solution. I do remember saying, we need help, we need help. And no help was coming. And I also again blamed Hayden for that. It was like I was putting so much responsibility on him to make things happen, and he never did. And so then I started to resent him and start getting angry because I was like, you don't care. Like, we need help. It's beyond this. Like, it's beyond us. I had a very codependent relationship with him. And in a lot of ways, he had a codependent relationship with me. Even my relationship with God, which was important to me before, I no longer wanted. I didn't want to go to church anymore. I didn't want to be around anyone because I just felt like we were battling this alone, like no one else goes through this stuff. It's like a shameful thing to be struggling as a couple like this. And yeah, we didn't really have anyone around us that were like honest or vulnerable in that sense to talk. After being so intense, like having these escalations and whatever, I then would calm. I would kind of like mellow out and I'd be fine. And then I would escalate again, and then I'd be fine. And then, you know, I'd be able to go to work and I'd be fine. But then I would find I'm serving my enemies, the ones that actually hurt me. Like, I literally had to serve a few of those faces that gang raped me. Then the torment will come 100 times more straight away. As soon as I get home, torment's through the roof. I felt disgusting. I would have showers multiple times a day because I felt so unclean and dirty. And then I just would not even go near Hayden. I would be so far from him, and he would try and reach out and I go, no, don't touch me. I stabilized for a little bit. I felt like I could go into a purposeful job, which was youth work, and help other foster kids. Like, it'll be great. Like, I'll be advocate for them, and, you know, I'll find healing in that. But of course, as much as I kept telling myself, I'm not triggered, I'm fine, it actually caught up with me again. Hearing these young people express how much, or tell me or disclose to me what was going on for them, I felt so much injustice, and I had so much emotion and anger, and so my advocating became very aggressive, and it just wasn't working. It was causing problems. And so I started seeing myself decline again, starting to feel the real weight of the trauma that I had experienced, and it was bringing up so much for me. The workaholism was really bad. Like, I would take every shift. And then that got to a point where I didn't even go home anymore. The only time I ever went home was to probably refresh my suitcase, but then that was about it. I wouldn't be around very long. I would be out almost every day. Whenever I finished work, I would catch up with friends. And I would just start drinking. I started smoking. These are things that I was definitely not wanting to be involved in, only because I'd seen my birth family. They're all users, like they're all on ice or they all smoke, and I always seen them and I was like, I don't want to be like them. But because I was feeling the way I was feeling with my trauma, and the voices just got louder in my head, and so the only way to kind of shut those things out was drinking, was smoking, was partying, was being up all night, then going to work. I was still managing, I was fine. Well, that's what I thought, until it became cocaine. I was vulnerable to predatory behavior again. Like people, like men were looking at me. I found a friend at work who was very much an opposite to Hayden. He was a big, muscly, tattered man. He was very manipulative and like very controlling. This person, regardless, knew that I was married, but like he didn't care. And at that point I didn't care either. And so I got quite involved with that person. There was times where I'd come to my senses and go, what am I doing in this space? Like, this can't be right. But then it would get overcome again. And then I'd go, no, remember your worth, Meltem. You're nothing. Like, you're being treated this way because this is what you deserve. And this particular man just became more and more controlling and suffocating. And I started to feel like I was dying. And I had moments where I'd think to myself, this is not where I belong. But then I'd go, yes, it is. And then I'd be in conflict. Then I would go numb it out by something, like a drug or alcohol or smoking or whatever it is. But I remember like meeting a lady when I really hit rock bottom. She was the one who actually mentioned to me Destiny Haven. Her daughter had done the program. She said it would benefit me. But it took weeks and weeks and weeks to convince me to even look at the website. But then I got really desperate where I was so sickly that I was like, I need help. And she said, I know you need help. And surprisingly, I got accepted. And so it was like a little bit of a process, but then eventually I did show up. And it was the hardest day of my life, one of the hardest days of my life. Hayden stuck through it all. He stuck through all that. So I had been like absent for quite some time. Then I demanded him the night before to drive me. And that was so hard because I was so mean to him. But I remember saying goodbye and I just remember seeing tears in his eyes. And it's like a part of me just clicked back over and was like, this is like the final goodbye. Like, am I ever going to see him again? And then I just sort of like disconnected from myself again. Like, we wanted to get rid of him. Now you've got rid of him. And like just these tormenting thoughts in my mind. Just felt scared. Because I don't know what my life was going to look like from there on. Because even though we'd been suffering for so long. And what I thought I wanted was to get rid of and move on and let him move on. It's like I didn't want it anymore. It's like part of me is just like, oh no, it's happening. We've achieved what we want to achieve, but it's not what we want. I do remember the drive up to Destiny. I was crying the whole time. I was crying, looking out the window going, why am I getting further and further away from civilization? But at the same time, I was just so done. There was something about Destiny Haven that I was like, this is not the worst place in the world. I was like, this is not so bad like it was in the past, but I also don't want to be here. I can't be here because I was always a runner. Like I always run. If I can escape, I will. But for some reason, every time I tried to do that at Destiny, I couldn't. It's like I couldn't take that next step. It's just like, this is it. But every time I was like packed my bags, I'd have this quiet whisper in my mind, you got nowhere to go. So then I'd unpack. Or my roommate will go, don't do it. Or like someone would just say something and it would just resonate with me. It would happen quite a bit. I packed my bag if I was unhappy about something. I just wasn't engaging all that much in the program. Women in the program are called diamonds because diamonds, when you find them, like they're all got an encasing of yuck. Like you have to chisel away to find the actual beauty underneath it. And so it's like us. We're also covered with yuck, trauma and brokenness. And it's like going to take time. You just chisel away and then there's the beauty under it. And Janine is a CEO. She just sees the beauty as soon as you walk through the door. She knows who you can be. And she looks past that brokenness and goes, that's her right there and I'm going to help her find that. And she's had lived experience She's gone through rehab. She's an amazing woman who just loves hugely and has such a heart and passion for women just like her. And I'm so grateful for her tough love at times. I'm forever grateful for her and her husband, Lewis, who also was an incredible part of my journey. He was another safe person that, I know Hayden was a safe person, but Lewis as a father figure, that was really special. It gave me a different perspective on men, like on father figures. I remember Janine meeting me in the hallway. She just come and embraced me. I hadn't hugged anyone until that point when she opened her arms and was like, come here. And she said, you just got to see this as your first home. Get rid of what you know, get rid of all your experiences being in this home, that home. See this as your first home and trust it. It was so comforting, that whole experience. And I just felt like just a mother encasing me. And I was like, that I've never had before. Feeling that sense of comfort that I'd not known before was like, okay, I'm going to trust this just a bit more. And so then because my attitude started to change, I just started to enjoy the process. But I loved the volunteers. They have all done the program, and so that was an important aspect of my journey, because it wasn't just like them telling you what to do just for the sake of it. Like, they've actually been there and they've actually overcome, and they're still overcoming. And so that was inspiring, and they knew how to encourage, because you hit certain stages of the program where you feel like you're losing momentum or you feel like you're not growing, and it's like the volunteers know, and then they kind of speak into that and help us keep persevering. And so it's just a really encouraging place and an honest place, and you're just encouraged to be yourself. Like, it's okay to peel it all back. I think just being in a community helped me so much, because I lived so long, felt so alone. I'm still holding on to Plan B for 6 months. Plan B was to leave and go back to this abusive man, because I knew Hayden was out of the picture. He would not even forgive me for any of what I've done. So it's like, what's the point? And deep underlining problem that I had was that belief of, I'm not worthy, I'm guilty, I'm a shameful person, I'm dirty, I'm everything wrong. So 6 months, we were encouraged to watch a Louis Giglio video, and it was called Wounded. Louis, particularly in one of these videos, and it looked like he looked straight at me, and he said, "This family's not for you," and then went back. And it wasn't even a live video, it was like a DVD. And I just went, what? Because that was the plan in my head. I was like, go back to that family. And he literally stops mid-message, "That family's not for you." And I was like, oh, damn. And then we ended up watching another Louis on another occasion, and that's when it shared the gospel story. Which, of course, I did youth group, I've heard the gospel, I've heard all this, I've heard that, but it never really sank. But this time it did, because I was just like, I have done the most terrible things. I've done such terrible things. Hearing how Jesus knew he'd gone through horrendous trauma, like an abuse and abandonment, and just he actually could relate to me. I'm abandoned and rejected. Jesus actually knew exactly how that felt. He lived it. He experienced it. And so I just started sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And it was just like I said this little quiet prayer in my heart. So it was like this humbling moment, and then I was just like, that's it, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done being deceitful. I'm done. It was just this whole moment of confession inside. And I felt safe enough to just, okay, I need to go tell someone about this. Then I ran into Janine's office and I told her about what I was still up to, what I was still hiding, about my plan B, and just being dishonest being dishonest in the community. I guess experiencing God's forgiveness, but then also experiencing her forgiveness was like really freeing. And it was something that I wanted to continue to pursue because I was like, wow, I actually have a chance. Janine said that I had to call Hayden. And in my head, I was like, oh, heck no. Like, I didn't think this was part of it. Like, no, I can't tell him. And so that night, I was in my room and I was just praying. And I said, God, if you want to reconcile us, that would be wonderful. But I also know that it might not happen. He might not forgive me, and that's okay too. Yeah, when I made that phone call, Hayden was expecting me to yell at him and abuse him over the phone, but I was really gentle and calm, and he could sense something was different. And I just said, I'm so sorry. And then I was like, will you come to a counselling session by any chance? And he's just like the quietest, like nothing. And I just waited, and he goes, yes. He did come to the counselling session, and then that's when I told him that I was involved in another relationship, that I was unfaithful to him, and that I was living a double life. And that immediately broke him because he said he had a feeling. We just both cried, and he was so angry, but like quietly angry. He just was so angry. You could just tell me he was so heartbroken. And so we just sat there quietly until Janine intervened and just said, so what now? Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go separate ways? Are you going to work this out? I was praying internally, please say yes. I want to work this out, please. And then Hayden said yes. So we both said yes. And then I just felt like this peace and this relief, but also so much grief. Like I felt so much sadness, like for his sake, because it was like the last thing that I ever wanted to do was to hurt him. And I did just that. And then we had to just have hard conversations. I think I could actually hear what he had to say and see it from his point of view, and to not be defensive about it, but to actually give him time to talk. I just know it was a really hard conversation, but like tell me how he was feeling over those years and just how much I harmed him, like how much I hurt him. I said to Janine that I'd really like to renew my vows and have my Destiny family as witnesses to a vow that I'm going to keep. I can be the wife that Hayden deserves. And she's like, of course, let's do it. And I remember like being prompted in my heart to ask Lewis to walk me down the aisle because I never had that experience. And honestly, this day was the most incredible day that I will never forget, and I ended up getting my fairy tale wedding after all. You know, something that hurt so much, like our first wedding, like our wedding originally was so miserable and heartbreaking, but then like it was just totally restored in such a beautiful way. I got the dream dress exactly what I wanted. And just the overall day was just so beautiful. So I was in the program for 14 months, and I learned pretty quickly that everyone's on their different journey. Like some people might finish at the 12-month mark, some might finish later on. Like there is no rush to leave. I didn't want to leave, which was a total difference from originally. It was just like, I want to run, I want to go, to I love this place so much. Like I actually want to stay. I'm learning so much about myself. I'm healing so much. I love this community. I want to stay. Like this is my family. I literally just learned everything that you would actually should learn if you were brought up in a decent household. I just learned so much about relationships, and I just can't do life alone, and it's okay. Like, there are safe people. There are people that I can trust. I learned conflict resolution. That was healing for me because, all I had ever known was silent treatment or avoid it or don't even confront it, don't even talk about it. And it was like very modeled. It's just modeled to you. When we started doing Understanding Trauma Group, I quickly understood that I wasn't alone. You come in thinking you're like the only one that thinks this way, you're the only one that behaves this way, reacts this way, etc. But once you start delving into some of the work of understanding trauma, understand how the brain works, it's kind of like, oh, I'm not actually alone. You do experience that too. Yes, different trauma and stuff and different reactions, but it's actually quite similar. Just understanding the brain and sensations, feelings in our bodies, connecting with ourselves, learning to connect was so crucial to the healing journey. It just made sense. It was like, oh, yeah, that's what's happening. So understanding trauma taught me how to be present, to actually ground myself, ask myself questions, because when we are triggered, we think we're right there. We're back in that trauma when we're not actually there. And so I learned how to actually still myself, ground myself, and actually bring myself back to the present and back online and be able to learn how to self-soothe. And so then when you find yourself triggered in any moment, you can remind yourself that, hey, wait a minute, we don't belong there anymore. You don't actually live there anymore. For me, in my faith in God, shame that's not a label we carry. Like, it's not something that belongs to me, because Jesus took that shame, he took that guilt, he took all of my mess, my mistakes, everything that I've done, everything that anyone else has done to me. Like, he took that. As a Christian, as a born-again Christian, I now am called not to hold that anymore. Like, I'm actually victorious. I'm actually not a victim. I'm not shameful. I'm not guilty. So anything and everything that has ever gone before is finished with. So I can step into my destiny because shame doesn't belong to me anymore. So I slowly transitioned out from Destiny Haven after I graduated. And so when I returned home, I was home for a couple of months before I decided that I'd like to go back into the youth work industry. And I guess with all the experiences and tools that I learnt, and I think I utilised those tools whilst I was working with these youth workers, like the way that I was interacting with them, I was getting a different response, and it was a positive one. I felt like I was able to clean some stuff up, like the way that I found healing going back in the industry. And so I felt like I was being a team player. I was delegating, which is a skill that I hadn't learnt until Destiny. It's like, you can't do it all. You can't control everything. It's just like, you need to actually work as a team. Like, you need help, and that's okay. And so I did that for a year. I left there, wasn't sure what I was going to do. A passion of mine is young people in care. And I happened to find out about this Aunties and Uncles program. Hayden and I started a mentoring program with a young person, and it's, you just hang out with a young person that matches your personality and have fun and make good memories. And so we've been doing that for a little while now and really enjoying that. So it's been really rewarding. Hope is important. It's actually like a hard question, but also a simple question, because what's the point if you don't have hope in something? Like, there's no purpose, it's just empty. It's like, okay, well, what's the point? What am I moving towards? Like, there's nothing there. But for me, there's something. And I don't know what that is, though. I just know it's good. And I know that my future is hopeful. I didn't have hope before. I was feeling very, very hopeless, and there was nothing for me. But now I feel hopeful and I feel assured. I feel like I'm secure. Regardless of what happens here on out, like I just find my security in Christ. And knowing his character, knowing that he's good and he cares for me and loves me, I'm hopeful. Vulnerability is like, it's honesty, because if I'm holding and withholding stuff, you can't get in there and work on it. You can't do much with something hidden. You don't get very far with not being vulnerable. Like, you've got to have the courage to actually expose yourself a little bit. Vulnerability is required for new growth. I know it's scary, but as soon as if you have like a small dose of it, then you understand like it's so necessary for the journey. I want to encourage others to find hope as well. Life is what you make it, really. It's not like what you've grown into is your life. It's the choices, and I just want to be that encouragement to whoever sees this, to be like, oh, like I can choose how I want my life to turn out. I can choose to get the help. I can choose. And that was something that I learned so much at Destiny. It's a choice every moment of every day. And that's just how life goes. If you want a really good life, it's making good choices. And I hope to be an inspiration to others. It's also healing for me as well. Yeah. Fight for your life. Like, there's more to it than what you know. And so give it a chance. Yeah.